Welcome newbies to this last workshop for some of you. This workshop entitled After the First Year signals the end for some of you, and some of you will start up again with me the next year. But in preparing this workshop for you, Kelly and I had a lot of things that we wanted to share with you, and we felt that way this whole year, that there's no way in 2 hours that we can give you everything that we have learned in our several years of experience in homeschooling. But we're going to try, and we try each and every month, and we're going to try also this month. But again, there are 2 or 3 things that we want you to take away from the workshop, because I know that I enjoy conducting these workshops. I enjoy helping you. I enjoy supporting newbies. Both of us want to be there, Kelly and myself, for you. We care for you. We care for not just this year or the second year, but 5 years down the road. We hope you reflect back on New Beginnings. We hope that you were blessed by our program. We hope that you tell others about our program. A lot of the business that we get comes from word of mouth. We feel that by giving you one-to-one attention and support, that you will stick with the journey longer. It's really hard to go to some of these support group meetings and just having one night, everything that, come and show up one night at some of these meetings, and then they end up telling you what you're going to need for this first year. You know now by going through this program that there's no way you can get it in one night, not even 1 week, not even 1 month. And you see the beauty then of going through our program for the year, because it allows you time to address these issues as you come along in them in your journey. Also, I think you build appreciation for some of these things that we're explaining to you. It's not that you don't appreciate them now, but there's so much, they have so much more value to you when you're actually struggling with an issue that we have talked about here before. So that's really what we want to do, is to equip you and arm you after you leave us this month. But first, we're going to go through the workshop. And like I said, there's, I always enjoy doing these workshops, and so I tend to sometimes get sidetracked. And you also notice that I don't stick 100% by the outline, because I feel like you can read the outline, and you're not with me, face to face in person like my physical location members are, where I can skip over a part if they get it, or stay on a part if they don't get it, because they can, ask a question in the class. And so what I try to do is give you more than what's in the outline, because you can read this outline on your own, right? I try to stick by it so you know what we're talking about, but I want to give you more than just what's here in the outline. So that's my way of doing it. I kind of get a twofer. We have here in the outline, that I can explain issues to you also. So here are the 3 things that I want you to take away from this month. Number 1, that I want to give you encouragement for the long haul. Also, I want you to take this time to get clarification on any of the homeschooling issues, things that we have discussed in the previous workshops that you didn't understand. I want you to ask those questions, get them understood now, because then you're not struggling years ahead. And you just don't know how many homeschool moms that we have helped. And of course, I maintain privacy with all of our newbies. But we have helped several homeschool moms who have been homeschooling 4 and 5 and 6 years down the road, and because they didn't grasp some of these foundational things in the beginning, they have still struggled with it. So we have had to come back and help them with these things. So that's what I'm encouraging you to do, to take time now and to get clarification on some of the things that you don't understand. The other thing that I want you to recognize about yourself and your journey is to recognize not if you get homeschool burnout, but when you get homeschool burnout, and the need to have to reevaluate. We all get it. We are all going to get it, no matter how wonderful our curriculum is, no matter how wonderful you may feel that we're organized. We all get homeschool burnout. It's just one of the side effects of this wonderful journey, because it is hard work. And anytime you have hard work, there's going to come a point where you need to stop, reevaluate, and maybe even play, or just say, okay, I need to reevaluate what I need to do. So that's the other thing. That's what I want you to take away. Those are the 3 things I want you to take away from this workshop. Now, another thing I want to bring out to you here at the beginning of the workshop is I want you to think about how you're going to define success in your journey. How do you define that? Because if we don't have or adopt, I should say, a meaning of what we think success is, we're just going to kind of bounce around to different philosophies and different curriculums. And it's the one thing that's very time consuming in the homeschooling world. I have seen moms spend time on asking about this and asking about this philosophy, and there's nothing wrong with investigating and exploring, and that's what you're really trying to do these first couple of years of homeschooling. But once you feel like, okay, this is the goals, or this is the way that my family wants to meet success, or this is the way we define it, then you really save a lot of wasted energy by looking after things that don't even align with what your view of success is. And what am I talking about? Well, if you're homeschooling to instill biblical values, then you can see that the measure of success is by the way that we're leading our lives according to the Bible standards, not according to this world standards. In addition, perhaps some of you don't have a desire to send your children to college. But we do have a desire to have a high academic standard. So that's going to define what courses we choose in high school. Or some of us want our children to go to college and want them to be college ready. So then that will affect what courses we choose even as early as 6th or 7th or 8th grade. Hope you were able to see that from when we talked about the high school workshop. So, just in other words, I want you to just think about this workshop by the end of it, how you're going to define success, because how you define success then really saves you a lot of wasted energy, and it really keeps your path straight. It keeps your feet solid so that when burnout comes, you'll know, okay, I might have to change something about the way we get there, but I don't have to just completely give up my philosophy. And too, some of you may change your philosophy along the way. I have. It's very normal to kind of tweak and define it more as you go along. Whereas I started out more totally classical, I should say, then I realized there were some things about the other approaches that I want to bring in, some Charlotte Mason, and especially the unit study that I've basically settled on for now. So, it's hard for when a newbie asks me, well, what kind of approach do you take? Because there's not just one particular one I can just say, okay, we just fit in the box, just straight across the board in this particular, approach. It's really hard to do that because every subject is different, every child is different. And sometimes a different approach will, work on one child, it may not work on the other one. So you just have to be flexible, as a home educator. Okay, the other thing I want you to talk about is, or I want you to think about rather, is when it comes to resistance. And sometimes as newbies, we are more prone to just directly think, okay, well, it's the curriculum that's giving me problems. We're going to ditch this curriculum and we're going to start another curriculum. And it may be the curriculum. And sometimes, and 3 months really is a good standard to see whether that curriculum is going to work or not. I kind of give that to newbies because I think they really kind of need some rule of thumb to measure by. And so 3 months is a good enough time to figure out whether it's working for your family or not. But in that 3 months, keep in mind that during that 3 months, hopefully your schedule was somewhat, normal. The time to measure that curriculum is not, say, for example, when you have a big move, or when you're expecting another child, or when you've had a long-term sickness, or when you've had a death in your family. That's not the time to say, okay, well, that curriculum didn't work for us. Really, when you get a new curriculum, you want to be able to give it full attention into your home and really see if it works for your child or not before we, quote, blame the curriculum. Because I have seen this over and over, and I still see it in the homeschool world, that they'll say, okay, well, it's the curriculum. When actually, it may not be the curriculum. It may be a lack of scheduling. It may be a lack of being consistent with the routine. It may be too much schedule. It may be too much routine. And I have said this until I'm blue in the face to moms over and over and over again. But somehow they just feel like if they're relaxed, that just means no schooling. And that is not true. Relaxed does not equal no schooling. Relaxed equals enjoyment, fulfillment, satisfaction, eagerness to learn. And I just want you to remember that as you go along. And there's a fine line, and I have shared this in the previous workshops. There's a fine line, you know, between relaxed and lazy that we don't want. We don't want lazy. But relaxed, yes, we do. Because when a child is in a relaxing environment, they can learn, they want to learn, they're at home, they're with their siblings, they can explore, they can investigate, they can inquire. This makes a child want to learn. So just remember, what type of atmosphere am I creating at home? Is it an atmosphere that's conducive for relaxed learning? That is what you want. And to be consistent. And like I said, sometimes it's a curriculum, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a lack of structure on our part. Sometimes it's a lack of organization on our part. We may not be organized, and we could be aggravating or irritating our children, and we don't want to do that. We want to set a fine example for them. At the same time, we don't want to have an extremist view when it comes to education, that we're just going to be so sullen and it has to be horrible and it can't be enjoyed. You know, we want it to be something that they look forward to. And no, not every day. Even do my kids look forward to, you know, oh, I'm so excited today for school. But for the most part, it's something that we enjoy day by day because there's just some subjects they don't want to do. But I do try hard to create the environment that is relaxing for them, that is conducive to learning, that makes them want to keep homeschooling the next year. And I hope that's what you've done this year. If you haven't, don't cry tears. Don't cry tears. It will be okay. Try to do that from the time you leave us until the time you start your school up again. We don't want tears in our homeschooling. We want our children to love school. Be the reasonable parent so your child will see, my mom's excited about this. My mom and dad, maybe they don't have everything figured out, but I know that they're going to try to change things so that I actually enjoy it. And that's what I encourage you to do. And not every child is, maybe they didn't have, you know, a particularly great time this first year. That's very normal because it takes longer than 1 year to learn how to homeschool. You remember I told you way back when we first started that I hear so many dads say, well, I'm going to give her a year to see how she does. And I think, oh, the pressure's on. And little does he know, it takes longer than a year. Sometimes we have these high expectations. Oh, well, by the end of the year, we're really going to have it all together, and they're really going to be making progress. And some moms barely make it through half of a math book in a year. But it's okay. It's normal. We have all struggled and been there. The point is to not give up. It gets better. It gets better because you're just that much more experienced this first year. So that's what I want you to keep in mind. Remember that the journey that we're going on, you know, we measure year to year, day to day. And I've encouraged you before to not just measure in terms of just a week or even a year. Try to measure 1 year against the other year. If you start thinking in terms of how much you're accomplishing by measuring 1 year against another year, it's so much more better of a picture than just say 1 week by the next week or this month by this next month, because we all have times where, you know, we fall off, we get off, and we just need to get back up and keep trying. Homeschooling is no different. This journey is no different. And here's the other thing that we need to be able to assess from this time forward, is you need to be able to take your subjects, and I have shared with you the content, the skill subjects. I have showed the difference in how we prioritize and how we keep something important. Prioritizing is being able to keep something important from the beginning all the way to the end of our journey. And then, but we also realize that the older a child gets and the more advanced he gets, it gets easier to do these skill subjects, and more emphasis should be on the content subjects, the fun subjects. As they get older, it becomes more apparent what their strengths are, what their interests are. It may not be our interest, but it's what their interests are. Maybe their interest lies in more science, or more history, or more art, or more music, or more sports, or cooking, decorating. You know, we need all of those types of folks, you know, in our community. So as they get older, that's the time then to focus on those content subjects. So we really, I encourage you from the bottom of my heart, when they're young, to keep it on those skills. It's awful, it's so awful to see middle school and high school children to struggle to just write one paragraph and not just with the paragraph, but penmanship itself, because there was just a lack of it in the lower grades, or perhaps there was a lot more field trips, a lot more co-ops, and a lot of these things where the child didn't have the time to develop these skills at home. It's just a few precious years you have when they're young to get those skills in, and you have your whole homeschool journey to do all of these field trips and do all of these other things that you want to do. So I encourage you to try to stay focused on those. It doesn't mean lock yourself up and become a hermit in the house. But if you live in a community, and I happen to live in a community where there's a lot of homeschool activities going on, and I have not always done that. In the beginning of my journey, I had to drive an hour or two just to get a field trip. Now I can go out my back door and there's stuff going on everywhere. So I've had both ends of the spectrum. It doesn't matter. You can still keep yourself so busy driving when you live in the country that you're not actually at home. Well, we got this day, and this day, this next day, and this next day. And then on top of that, the more kids you get, the crazier, the more kids you have rather, and that they are part of activities, the crazier it gets. Some of this you can't help as they get older, because they need, their violin lessons, their guitar lessons, their piano, their interaction, especially teens, high schoolers. They need that interaction. They want to be with other teens. They enjoy the socialization, and they need it at that time. They need friends outside of the house, and they want to be sure that they can have these needs fulfilled. And when I first started homeschooling, I thought, well, it's so hard teaching them, because I was hauling all these kids, and I had the strollers and the babies and hauling one on my back, and here I was at the field trip. I was exhausted, but we were going to be educated. And I thought, oh, that's so hard. And then as they get older, they get teens and they get high school, and then you realize, oh my, it's hard in a different way, because now they have other needs that need to be fulfilled. So just be prepared that the whole homeschool journey, it's a hard one. It's vigorous. It's not for the faint of heart, but you can do it. Take it one day at a time. Take it 1 year at a time. We will always be here for you. Okay, I want you to remember that. And remember this too, that when that happens, you have to be able to evaluate and say, okay, well, last year we really buckled down and we really were language arts focused, or math focused, or history focused. There's nothing wrong with this year saying, okay, we're going to be science focused. That's what the journey's about. It's kind of like a ship. It tacks back and forth until it gets to where it needs to get to. It's the same way with homeschooling. If you get behind, or say you only can focus on, okay, we're going to really focus on getting these science experiments done, then just put history in the background for about 6 months, or even until the next year. Maybe just read some biographies, just read some history read-alouds, but really focus on getting really a lot of good science done. Okay, then the next year, put science to the background, put history to the front. See, somewhere in your journey, something's going to happen. There's going to be long-term sickness, pregnancy, move, job change, burnout, you don't like homeschooling no more, you want to send it back to public school, all kinds of things are going to come up. But just remember that you can shift and evaluate, but just keep yourself accountable. Realize what you did last year and compare it to what you do this year. And that's why I want to help you to think outside of just this year, what you did or did not accomplish. I want you to start comparing years to years, months to months, 3 years. I even have a friend that compares 3 years at a time. 3 years to these 3 years. What a wonderful way to measure. Much better way to measure. There's not so much pressure on yourself. Okay, I've got to perform this week, this month, this year. You're realizing, okay, I've got to compare this year with this year. And a year is a long time that if we fall off the horse a month or so, we can get back on. That's a long time to be able to get caught up, is it not? You can see that when we look outside and we look at the long-term picture, that it looks a little bit different. And that's what I want to encourage you to do. To keep thinking about that. When that time comes, think, okay, how can I look at the long-term picture here, what we did? Not just, okay, I've been pregnant for 3 months. These past 3 months, I've been up on bed rest. I haven't been able to do anything, and all the kids are behind. And I'm surely going to have to send them back to public school. Please don't do that. I've been there too. And yes, there were some things I did. I turned the TV on. I put Barney and Blue's Clues and whatever else I could in front of the TV, because a couple of days I was just so sick I couldn't do anything else. But that time passed and it went by, and I was able to get back on my feet and then share with them what I really wanted them to know. And of course, I didn't know that time was coming. I think had I knew that time was coming, I probably could have prepared a few more things, to have ready for them. And there's nothing wrong with that. We live here on the Texas Gulf Coast, and we're always talking about preparedness, for hurricanes. And I always tell my newbies, well, just have preparedness for, the hurricane that comes in your life. And it really is a good point. And so from that time forward, after that happened to me, I always had what I called, a little bag I could reach into. It was full of games or videos or activities that if I got sick or something came up, I already had this set of lesson plans, this unit study that I would just keep in this little bag. And if something happened, I would just reach in there, pull it out, and we'd have it already. I call it a preparedness bag, and I wanted to share that tip with you. So there's nothing wrong with having something like that put up. The kids don't know what it is. They've not been through it. It's something that they have not seen, and you put it away and you keep it away for if, something like that comes up. Maybe even save it for a rainy day. You can even save something like that for a rainy day, or you just say you just get in a mood and you just need something different. Then just pull something like that out. So I want to encourage you to think about that, being prepared for if that happens, because I don't want, to happen to you what happened to me. I got, caught off guard. But I learned from that, and I can share that with you. And I learned and I realized, okay, it wasn't, I didn't completely harm my children. I was able to, salvage that and then go forward, and they're just fine today. But, looking back, I realized I could have been a little bit more prepared for something like that in my life. And of course, we can't be prepared for everything, but having something like that would have, made me probably feel better, and would have probably made the time a little bit easier for us to go through when I was sick. Okay, so those are some things I want you to think about. And here's some other some questions I want to share with you too, in the journey as you're thinking about this. Just think about these questions when perhaps you're feeling stressed. And I haven't started the outline yet, so I'm just still sharing this, from my heart and from notes that I have made to share with you on this workshop. So we're still not in the outline. I don't want you to get confused looking for some place all over the outline. You're just listening to this right now. But just ask yourself these questions. Have I been home, or am I on the road too much? Have I forgotten how to say no? Do you remember that tiny two-letter word I asked you back in the beginning of the workshop, or the beginning of the year, that we're able to say no? And that's hard. That's hard for me to say no, because I like to do a lot of things. I always have a lot of things going on. I'm just that kind of person. I like to do for people. I like to have a lot going on. But I also have to realize that I need modesty. And that's what it's called, modesty. And that I have made a commitment to homeschool my children, and they need to get it first. And I need to fulfill my commitment to them, and because they deserve a good education. And so if that happens, even though, and I have had so many newbies come across with wonderful programs, wonderful volunteer programs that they have been involved in. Anything from helping the women and children at shelters, volunteering in the community. And I'm not saying just you have to stop all of those things, but what I am asking you to do is to please strike a balance. Strike a balance, because we only have these few years with our children, and then of course we have all these volunteer things that we can do afterwards. Just strike a balance and keep priorities. Some of us are able to juggle a little bit more than others, and some of us can't. Some of us can only just keep our minds on a few things at a time, and that's completely fine too. But just remember, have I forgotten how to say no and not feel bad about it? We can't feel bad about it. We have to say no, this is what I can do. We have to be modest so we can get done what we need to get done. Have I taken time to pray and to get spiritual nourishment? That's very important for me. I know that if I don't get that, I start feeling weak, I start feeling out of sorts. Then it keeps me focused, it keeps me centered, because then I realize that my goal then is to help my family first. I need to get my spiritual appetite, I need to get my Bible reading, my Bible program, my Bible studying in, and then I'm able to keep going with what I need to do for my family. Have I taken time to share my concerns with my husband? Are you just trying to keep all this into yourself? And I encourage you, when you talk with him, because it has been shown statistic-wise that majority of us that are homeschooling are moms. There are some dads who are helping out with the homeschooling, But for the most part, someone has to make a living, and perhaps both of you are helping with the living and doing some homeschooling, and that's wonderful. But it has been shown that a majority of the teaching falls on the shoulders of the mom. So I encourage you, when you speak with your husband, to share with him that you're not necessarily looking for a solution to the problem, because that's not really what we want. And sometimes they surprise you and they come up with a wonderful solution, something we can't really see because we're inside of it. We can't really see that solution, and they come up with something so easy. So I share with my husband how I feel, whether you have feelings of being inadequate, or if you're scared, or you're going to ruin your children, or you don't know if you can do this, or when it comes to high school, you think, okay, I surely need to do something different now that they're in high school. And I hope I've encouraged you to please not think that way. High school's when they need you the most. That's when they really need the catering to their learning style and their curriculum and their approach. But sometimes we think, oh, I can't do nothing. I'm going to ruin their chances for college, so I have to get another school. So just think about that, to share your concerns with your husband. Let him know how you feel. And then that way he can be there as a support, to hold you up, to lift you up. That's what you want. And most husbands are so good about that. And that is what we want from our husbands. We want to be supported. We want to be loved. We want to know that they're backing us. So share your concerns with him. Don't try to just go this by yourself. The same way you're not trying to go this by yourself and you join New Beginnings, and we're glad that you did. We're glad that you're with us. The same way, share with him. Share with your local support group. Try to be plugged in. As a rule, a lot of us homeschoolers are very independent. We're just kind of that way. We're like, okay, I can just do this on my own. I really don't need a group. I really don't need people. I really don't need to share. And I'm kind of that way too. But we do. We need each other. We need to share, because we have chosen a road less traveled. Now, I do have to admit, it's getting more and more traveled, but it still is the one less traveled compared to, to public school. But we need each other, and we need our husbands. We need to be able to share with them how we feel. So I encourage you to do that. The other thing I want you to think about is, here's another question. Do I need to switch curriculums, or is it that I just don't need to have my children do all of what this curriculum is telling me to do? Now remember, I gave you permission way back at the beginning of the year that you can tear pages out of books. It looks real good when you do it. Tear them out, throw them away, and then you get caught up. Remember, you're not teaching the curriculum, you're teaching a child. It is a tool. You do not have to go through every page if they have it. Or you may need to go through every page. You will know where your child is struggling because you are teaching them, you are tutoring them. You know more so now at the end of the year than you did at the beginning, when I tried to encourage you that you will know. No, you didn't know at the beginning. You didn't know what their learning style probably was after we talked about it. You didn't know a lot about curriculum, but you know more now than you did when you first started with us. So ask yourself, do I need to do all of this curriculum? And it's not a waste of money if you got your money's worth for what you needed out of it. There is not going to be a curriculum that is 100% perfect for us, our child, and the learning style. We're going to get close enough. And that's all we can ask, is just to get close enough. Okay, I'm going to stop right here, and then I'm going to finish asking the rest of these questions. And this is part 1, but I'm going to go ahead and stop right here. Okay, this is part 2. We're still asking these questions. We haven't started the outline yet because I have a lot I want to share with you in addition to that. So here's the next question that I want to share with you. Do I need to get some curriculum that is more structured so that I am more accountable? There's nothing wrong with doing that. If we feel like we're waffling and floundering around, we really don't know where we're going, we don't have a direction, maybe it's a hard year that year, we've had a lot to help with our husband with work, or we are working, or we had another child, a move, and there's just too much on our plate. There is nothing wrong. We want to be humble. We want to do what is best for our child. Sometimes as moms we think, oh, we have to be super mom, and it means all the lesson plan and all the prayer and the unit studies and all of this. It doesn't mean that at all. It means using what's available out there in the education world to structure and tailor to what our need is for that month, that day, or that year. So if we need something more structured, by all means, get it. Grab the box curriculum that's laid out, use it, tweak it to how you need it, go on, but stay with the journey. Stay with the journey. When you get caught up and you get your second wind, you can switch then. You don't have to wait to the end of the year to switch. I hope I've shared that with you. I hope you understand that I don't homeschool August to May. It doesn't even enter into my realm of existence. I just school every day. I school year round. I take breaks off. I take some summer off. I take spring off. But being here in Texas, it's so hot during the summer, we find that we get a lot done during the summer because it's just so hot. We school in the morning and we swim in the afternoon and we enjoy ourselves. And then when the fall comes and the spring comes, we're able to take some time off. That's just how it is here. And so try to remember that. Yes, there are some things about going back to school we share, and there are some things we do, but I want you to really think real hard and think seriously about not trying to follow the public school schedule unless you're in a state or a country that requires you to do that. Then it's different. But even at that, you still can have some say-so over your schedule. There's not a lot of states that have real strict homeschooling laws. There are a few, but not a lot. A majority of us kind of can, pick and choose how we school. So just remember that. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to perform from August. Okay, now it's the end of the school year. It's May. We should be done. May, like I said, May doesn't even have anything to do with me. I just go right into the summertime because it's too hot. We'd rather stay inside and school. That's how we get our school done. So think about that. Do I need to incorporate more fun and relaxing times in my day? Do you need to incorporate that to have more of a breakup of what you're doing? And have I forgotten that curriculum is not magical, accredited, or teaches character? Schools are accredited, not curriculum. And remember, accredited only has to do with a certain number of teachers they have. You can have private schools that don't have any accredited curriculum and have just as rigorous, if not more, standards. By being accredited by one of the agencies, it simply means they have X number of teachers, they're teaching X number of subjects, and they meet a certain criteria. It does not have a whole lot to do at times with how rigorous the curriculum is. And it does not really teach character. Yes, I know they have curriculum that, they say, okay, we highlight the character trait, and that's good, and I encourage you to use some of those. But again, all the godly curriculum is of no value if we're not modeling it. So it's us as a teacher that we always have to constantly be focusing on. Sometimes we get so focused on what the child is or is not doing that we don't turn the tables on ourselves or turn the mirror on ourselves and say, okay, what am I doing? How can I model this? What is there I can do that's better for my child? So remember, we're teaching that child. So a relationship captured in their heart and a serving heart attitude toward our child will have us view them as individuals or persons. Remember how much our children want to be viewed as persons, and more so as they hit middle school and teen and high school years. All they want is for us to listen to them. It may not be right. We may have heard it 10 times over, but they still want us to listen to them. We want to capture their heart. We want them to know that we're interested in them. We also hopefully want to instill in them a serving attitude toward others, to help and to give back toward others. That's what I want from my sons. And here's another point. Have I forgotten that a child is entitled to a childhood with free time to explore, investigate, and have a separate opinion from mine? Remember, we're not making little mini robots of ourselves. I hope not. I hope there's only just one. So, oh no, I tell my boys, I hope there's just one of me. So we don't want little bitty miniature robots of ourselves. They're entitled to a childhood with the need to be able to explore. Sometimes this world just puts so much pressure on us, and the homeschool world, same way. So much pressure to perform academically that we forget the love of the childhood. That is the time to explore. They're not ever going to be able to go back to these years again. So we just gradually want to add the academics and then give them the time to be a child. So those are some things that I want you to be able to think about. I also want to be sure that you have straight in your mind what a co-op is, what a local support group is, homeschool conventions, a lot of these terms that I have used over the past year, how state groups are set up. If you don't understand some of these things, be sure and post them, on the Yahoo loop. We always give attention to the questions, and we always give our newbies the attention first, and that's where we answer their questions there on the Yahoo group, because we know that, you know, in these workshops and sometimes in between you have questions, and we can clarify things there as well. All right, so let's get now into the actual workshop, and the outline there says after the first year. And here's our quote of the month. It says, the difference between perseverance and obstinacy is that one comes from a strong will and the other from a strong won't. So here's the first point that we want to make: success in the real world. Because success is what we're all really looking for in our homeschool journey. And like I was explaining earlier, each person measures success differently. Some of us are only interested in academics. Some of us are interested in spiritual. Some of us are interested in both. But just remember that success at any long-term project, it requires much hard work, diligence, but more than anything, ladies, I encourage you to visualize that end goal. You have to visualize where you're going to end up. For some that are coming in high school, you're just around the corner and you can see the end goal. For those that are just starting, it's hard to look around that corner and stretch your neck to see it, but try to visualize how you want your sons and daughters to be, the type of persons that you want them to grow up to be. When you visualize that, it keeps it strong, it keeps it real in your mind, and it keeps you choosing the curriculum, your path, your friends, your associates, support groups, everything will come in line with that. And just remember that we're not really promising you here a road of no failures, disappointments, and plain downright hard work. That's what homeschooling is all about. But I do want to encourage you to remember that thousands on top of thousands of families have traveled this road before you and have succeeded. And not only succeeded, but they kind of enjoyed their way. As they enjoyed it as they went along the way. And I want you to put emphasis on enjoying it as well. Not just get so focused, we got to get these academics done, we got to have this testing done, we got to get all this stuff. But try to really enjoy being around your children every day. Try to enjoy being immersed and learning with them. I know that I have learned so many new things since I have started homeschooling. I tell everybody I have started homeschooling. I've learned so much. And you really feel that way when you start, because it's a way to kind of go back and redo your education all over. So they were not only successful, but really a lot of these homeschoolers enjoyed the process. So there would be pitfalls and a lot of discouragement along the way, but keep in mind your end goals. And if something's not working, be flexible. Be willing to change it. So here's the point that I want you to understand about being obstinate. And actually we define it here under that A. It says it's the act of being stubborn. And some dictionaries even use the word insane. Do we ever want to be accused of being those insane homeschoolers? Okay, all right. Well, maybe we are accused of being insane when we start to homeschool. But do we really want to be accused of being insane from other homeschoolers? Probably not. None of us want to be accused of being insane by other homeschoolers. So why would they call us insane? Well, sometimes, you know, we find a schedule or a curriculum that we think is working for us only to find out that it's not. But, you know, we don't want to give it up because we're going to make it work because we liked it or we paid those dollars for it. And sure, sometimes we have to keep it because the budget doesn't allow us to switch it at that particular time. But can we tweak it if it's not working at that time? You know, or sometimes, perhaps, previously we were flying by the seat of our pants when it comes to a schedule. And then we realized, okay, well, maybe we need self-discipline. But we never really added into our schedule. Or we really never placed the emphasis on being organized. Maybe we need a curriculum planner. You know, I have a free curriculum planner on my site. And so we think, okay, well, you know, I really don't need that. You know, let me just focus on this other. But is it not insane that if there's something, that a weakness that we have, that we don't stop and address it so that, you know, we see that as success. We see, okay, we're not just shoring up our children's weaknesses, but we're shoring up our weaknesses. And we see we have a weakness and we need to address it. So we don't want to be considered, you know, insane because perhaps chaos rules in our house. So are we enjoying the flexibility of homeschool freedom? And the fear of failure, or of not doing this right, that's okay. That's okay to feel that way. Sometimes that stays with us for a long time in our homeschool journey. But along in the journey, we realized, I think it was about 5 years into my journey, maybe 6 years into my journey, that I realized, that I probably didn't need to buy every teacher's manual. I probably just needed the answer sheet. But I bought every teacher's manual. I happen to enjoy teacher's manuals. I like teacher's manuals. I just read them in my spare time. Can you believe who does that? But I would do that at the beginning. Well, it wasn't until about 5 or 6 years into my journey that, I realized I can let go of some of that of not doing it right. Because then I started realizing, even within the same school, within the same public school, teachers will be teaching something different perhaps in 3rd grade, and there wasn't anything uniform because they go to 4th grade, they may get some of the same material repeated because there's not a uniform standard of education that's across the board within the same school, let alone across the country. So I started letting go of some of that fear that this is right. I just realized when we study a subject, which is what drew me to the unit study method, is that when we study a subject or a topic, we will just study it as deeply as we wanted to, and then we would just stop. It may be up to a 4th grade level. It may be to a 6th grade level. It may be to a high school level. But is there really levels when it comes to content subjects? There's really not. Civil War, when it happened, we can learn that in 4th grade as well as we can learn the time period for happening in high school. Now, of course, there could be more significant issues we could cover with a high schooler that we would not perhaps want to cover with someone younger. But again, when it comes to learning, we just realize we can just go all the way and just stop where we want to. And this is kind of, you let go of some of that fear as you go along, but not at first. And like I said, it took me on until the 5th or 6th year before I'm like, I just let go of that. I'm like, I'm okay. I don't need to worry about when public school starts. I'm not constantly worried. I'm not constantly asking the neighbor down the road, oh, well, we're studying about this in high school. I would always be worried, well, we never even heard of that, much less studied that. Then I realized, you eventually cover all these topics as you go along in your journey. And what I realized is that a lot of topics we cover, they've never even heard of. So you stop trying to compare yourself to others, public school wise, those friends, we just kind of started leaving them behind. And you stop comparing yourself to others in the homeschool world. Everyone's going to have a unique journey. And that's why we need each other, because we're able to draw off suggestions. If you want to cover a topic or we're having a struggle in a particular topic, we can draw off the suggestions of each other. But again, the fear of failure or not doing it right, it's okay. It's okay to feel that way. But I'm here to tell you, eventually it goes away and it subsides a lot, where you really probably just don't even care what's going on with public school. Okay. Here's another question I want you to ask under 3. Is what we are doing presently insane? I covered just a little bit about that before. In other words, is it not good for our family? That's kind of what we call it, insane, but we're still doing it. We're still doing it. Now we feel like perhaps we want to break out this box and try unit study. By all means do that. Don't wait 5 or 6 years into your journey and say, okay, I think I can break away from it. And here's the point. You can still keep your box curriculum and try the unit study at the same time. You don't have to let go of something that's secure. Don't let go of your security blanket if you have something that you like and you try something new. We don't have to say it's all or nothing. Remember, I've encouraged you to not adopt that attitude when we come to homeschooling. We think we have to. Okay, well, if I get a Becca, I'm going to get it for every subject and for every kid. Remember, sometimes we make that mistake. We don't have to. We can mix and match. We can get a Becca for one kid, Bob Jones. We can use Calvert. We can use Apologia. We can have different sciences. Each one of our kids can have a different science if we're able to do that. So there's all sorts of options and flexibility that we can incorporate into our homeschooling. All right, just remember, we don't want to be considered insane. All right, here's the next point here on B. It says that a self-learner has a passion for learning. So what I want to stress to you is that at this time of the year is what I want you to do is to gradually take away some of the spoon feeding for our children. Now, I don't want you just to pull the rug out, say, okay, I got to do this now. I just don't want you to jerk the rug out from underneath your children. But what I want you to do is to realize that each year, at the end of your year, I want you to think, how can you take away some of the spoon feeding from our children? And because when we allow them to learn at a pace that is suited for them, then the self-learner has a passion then, lifetime. They have a passion for learning. And that's what I want you to do. And when I mean some of the spoon feeding, it's small things that you can do and think about each year. For example, could it be when they're young is that they realize that, okay, set their alarm either for getting up out of bed instead of you getting them up, or perhaps let them be aware of telling you when it's time to start the school day. See, let them start taking a little bit of accountability. So it can be small things like that. Okay, well, I'm ready to start the school day. Or let them go with you to choose out what kind of system you're going to use for organizing. Is it going to be binders to keep their work in, and each one has a shelf and it has their own color binder that's coordinated, and one for each subject? Is it going to be drawers? Is it going to be clothes storage? You know, is it going to be containers because you're moving? One time we had to keep all of our things in containers because we were in the middle of buying property and moving from one house to the other, so everyone had a container. And they would put their stuff in this container. So they need to be included on how they're going to set up this system that you want to keep. And then as they get older, then could it be them having their own student planner? They get a little bit older, then my son sat down with me, we go through a book and we determine how much can we get done within a month or a week, and they try to get it done. As they get older, then they have my curriculum planner, they're writing things in, or they're writing things in their student planner, they're checking things off, they get the teacher's manual, they get their answers, they get everything, they're teaching themselves. You see, we just gradually are taking away some of the spoon feeding each year. We're trying to think of ways, how can we help them to develop that art of independent learning? And we can't do this when we're always getting everything ready for them and setting them up. Now, I'm not saying, you know, I don't want you to pull the carpet out from them. I don't want you to think because they're 6 or 7 or 8 years old that they're capable of doing all that I just said on their own. Because they still need us as teachers. Remember, we wear the teacher hat up until about high school. We kind of switch hats to about supervisor. And sometimes even before that, some middle school kids are ready to kind of go on their own, or we're just wearing the supervisor hat. But up until that time, it's the teacher hat. And I'm not saying they have it down. I'm not saying they have the art of independent learning down. What we're doing is we're teaching them these skills. And why? Anything in life, they need to learn the art of independent study. Whether it's college, whether it's community college, whether it's running a household, whether it's working at a job, they need to learn, okay, I need to be aware. This is my responsibility for this work. I need to get started. I need to be conscientious. You see, we're developing all of these character traits in them along with studying academics. So that's what I want to encourage you now at the end of this year, to think of one little tiny thing that you're like, okay, let them take more responsibility. And sometimes it takes several months. Sometimes it takes a year to work on these particular things. But, you know, do I still want to be getting my kids up when they're in high school? No, I'm not going to be getting my grown kids up while they're in high school. They can be getting themselves up out of bed, getting started on their school, and they know what their chores are because it's very clearly outlined what their morning routine is. I don't use chores anymore. When I have, you know, older children, I use a morning routine like I would have a morning routine. You know, we say chores for younger ones. They understand that. I like using the words a routine as they get older because that's the word, what I like, just a routine. And so they have a routine. So, you know, no, I'm not impressed when, you know, we're getting a high schooler up out of the bed. They need to be getting up. They need to be getting after it. And if they can't, they can set their alarm clock. And if we don't have that under control, things are going to continue to be hard as we go along. So work on developing some of these character traits. Okay. So here's what we need to understand. When we allow them to learn at a pace that is suited for them, then a self-learner has a passion for a lifetime. That is the fruit of what we're doing. That is the fruit of what we're doing, because then giving them some of this independence, they can say, oh, I really enjoy studying this subject, or I'm going to study this, and I'm going to make it a lifetime habit. That's really what we want them to do, not just until they graduate or college, because remember, there's life after school. We want them to have a lifetime of being a learner. And we've not only accomplished our academic goals, but hopefully, like I was explaining before, we have fueled them for a lifetime of learning and really have improved their lives by the education we've given them. That's what we want, them to improve their lives by the education that we have given them. So then the C part says we need to be happy with who your child is, not what you want them to be. We touched a little bit of this through the year too, because sometimes, we want them just to come in complete conformance, and we want our children to obey us. They need to obey us, yes, but we also want to accept them as a person that was created, that is separate from us, that has different opinions as we want to value that. We want to fuel what their love is for learning. And we just sometimes forget that, though. We forget, well, I really don't like, science very much, so we're not going to do that. But our children may devour science, or they may like that, or they may want to do something with science as far as, college, or maybe an end goal, or maybe work, employment, or maybe they just enjoy, just for the love of learning. That is going to be their love for life. Well, we want to fuel that. So that comes into accepting who our child is and accepting their strengths and as well as their weaknesses. Another thing we want to remember is that we want to use test as a measurement tool. I talked at the beginning about tests, and so many homeschoolers are just so against tests. And yes, when we come out of the public school and we want sanctuary from something like that, we're just like, oh, because the public school seems, it can really teach a lot to the test. And no, it's not these teachers' faults. They're under guidelines, they're under codes. They have to do, what they're given instructions to do. But then what we want to do is swing back to having a balance. It's okay to want to be tested. It's okay to be able to take a test, but just have balance with it. It's normal as new homeschooling parents and even veterans to still want to measure, our children. But again, I want to caution you for that not to be the final authority. But there's just so many things in the world that we need tests. College, they want to see the test scores. Some colleges do. Some parents want their kids to be, to have that and to be organized and to have it in their portfolio. Other parents don't care about that. Some children end up doing college while they're at home. I was explaining to you about the CLEP in the last workshop. Some of them just start taking college courses. They just fold right into a college degree. And do they really even take an SAT? Some parents say, I don't really even see the need for taking an SAT test, because an SAT is college readiness at its best, and they're already doing college level courses. So you have to decide those things as a parent. Some parents say, I think you hinder them if they don't have it. Again, I'm just laying all of these options out to you, and you can decide. But that's how you need to decide how we're going to use tests. Don't run from it. It's just another tool in our tool pouch, so to speak, that we can take out if we need it. So just remember that. And here's some of the different kinds of tests. I have them listed here. We have the California Achievement Test. We can have tests that are administered by parents. Seton actually offers tests. We have the PASS test, the Personalized Achievement Summary System, and that's specifically for homeschoolers. It can be administered by parents and the Homeschooling.com. So there are some tests that we can have. We can keep them in our portfolio. Your particular state, your particular country may have a certain test that needs to be done each year. And here's some little tips. This isn't here on the outline again, but here's some little tips that I want to share with you about testing too. If at all possible, if any more nowadays, it wasn't heard back in the day, but it is nowadays, that a lot of homeschooling moms are also, used to be teachers or are able to, host these tests is what I'm trying to say. So if you can, look into having another homeschool mom or dad be the proctor so that they can administer these tests. They understand where you're coming from. They know, the influence that you've played in this child's life, and it also helps the child to know, hey, this person, she's another homeschool mom or dad, and they kind of understand about me, and it just kind of makes the whole process a lot easier. I know that when I have my kids tested, it's always nice if it's with another homeschool mom or someone like that kind of understands where we're coming from, and so they have many more nowadays. I mean, I see them all the time on the homeschool loops, offering to do this test, but just remember, you don't have to. You can administer them at home, you can send them off, get them graded, and have them back and have something in their portfolio. So you just kind of decide how you want to do that. So the local homeschool, like I was bringing out here, 3 local groups will sometimes have a homeschooling parent who will serve as a proctor. And then there's also free online tests. I know Texas has free online tests that they release each year, and they also change the websites, on a regular basis about when they're being released. But even if this one website is current this year, it may not be current in another 3 months, but you can always, Google the free online test, and you can just administer them there at the house. And sometimes I just administer these tests because I want to see what they've covered in a particular grade. And sometimes it helps me with, let me see my scope and sequence. I might want to cover that topic next year or something. So you can also do that just as a standard to measure by, and to give your children, to have them familiar with what a test is. They'll be having to take a lot of tests if they're in college, or even go to community college. Any type of apprenticeship, they'll need a test. Any more employers are requiring tests of all kinds. They'll just be familiar with what it is. Okay, I'm going to stop right here before we get to this no quick solutions, and I'm going to pick that up in just a minute about the no quick solutions. Pick it up on this part, no quick solutions. And the reason that we want to share this part with you is because we just want you to understand sometimes there's just not a quick solution to what we have. Sometimes it just, takes time for a child to develop and mature. We just have to wait on their maturity. Sometimes we want things to be solved quickly, and it just doesn't happen that way in the homeschooling world and in our journey. And I know that when you first started with me that, perhaps you had, really high expectations, or thought perhaps the problems that were going in public school were going to be solved. And I hope now you've been able to realize that by slowing down and taking a slower pace, we realize that we have time to address the solutions, but there's not really going to be quick, quick answers to the problems. Rather, we need to realize that sometimes there's just not quick solutions. But what we do want to understand is that it has to do with knowing our child's potential. So in other words, if we know that our child is delayed in a particular area, then we have more patience. We realize, okay, they are meeting their full potential, or perhaps they weren't challenged in public school. I get a lot of kids that come out that are gifted and talented, and these gifted and talented children, they are consuming to have to teach because they're quenched for knowledge and want to be able to do something. It's exhausting for a parent. So sometimes there's not a quick solution to that, but we can keep feeding them. And I always encourage you on gifted and talented children to kind of build out, sideways instead of stacking up on top. Build out this way, because even though they're gifted and talented and they're advanced in many areas, they're still that same age. They're still that same age, and they are entitled to a childhood. And by building out unit studies and fleshing them out, instead of stacking up higher grades on them, we don't burn them out. When they get there, they'll have something new to explore, which is always real keen for a child that's gifted and talented. They always want something new, but a lot of them too are just self-motivated and will look into these things. Okay, so give your child the tools he needs. At the end of our homeschooling journey, we will be wondering, did I do enough of this, or did I prepare enough of that? I know I am. There's no way we could have covered everything. I always hear parents say, well, I'm afraid there's going to be gaps. Well, of course there's going to be gaps. There's always going to be gaps. All of us have gaps. But, the concern is we don't want significant gaps in skill subjects. In other words, we want them to have the basics of language arts, the basics of reading, the basics of math, and we want to go beyond some of the basics if we can. We want to focus on the basics, but we want to try to go beyond the basics. But I don't think we ever look back at the end of the journey if you were to talk to any veterans and say, I just covered everything I really wanted to cover with my child. We always feel like there's something we're lacking or we were inadequate. But just remember, that what we want to do is to give them the tools. The love and the environment, I cannot stress it enough, that you create in your home is going to allow them to be motivated to what direction they want to go to. There's no way, that we can learn everything we want to. We talked about how our brain is the most amazing creation. It just has the ability to keep on learning and keep on learning. And that's what we want to do. Even as moms and dads, we have the desire to keep on learning. And I hope a lot of you are embracing the homeschooling journey with passion. I hope you embrace it with passion. I hope you come with vim and vigor and fire. I want you to have it when you teach your children. They need it. We need it. But just remember, that we want to focus on the tools, on giving them the tools, because there's no way we can look back on our journey. It's a very small, dinky journey when we're at the end of it looking back and thinking, oh, that just went by so quick, that we can give them everything that they need to know, but we want to try. But by giving them the tools, they'll always be able to have the passion and desire to want to learn something, and that's what we want them to do. And here's another thing I want to cover with you. Boredom is the mother of invention. Now, all of this pressure we put on ourselves about being good teachers and making it very interesting in our teaching and our homeschooling day, sometimes it's just not like that. Sometimes every day is kind of just the same. It happens that way year after year, day after day. They just kind of end up looking the same. But we tend to think, as parents, that boredom is a bad thing. And if we're not running them to piano practice, or then it's art lessons, then we think, okay, we're doing our children a disservice. But really, when every minute is filled up with something, there's really no time or no room for the children to create or to depend upon their own imagination. And, don't fill that time with computer and TV time, but let them discover their own resourcefulness. They might discover, a hidden talent or a new hobby. And if you think back to when you first started with New Beginnings and they were just coming off the public school treadmill, we really didn't have a lot of time to discover something we wanted to do. Or maybe it's a goal that your child's been wanting to do, but he couldn't, in public school with that timetable. And I talked a little bit about deschooling in about 3 workshops ago, the I Don't Wanna. We talked a little bit about that and about being able to do something that perhaps, your child's want to do. Well, how about you? Have you been wanting to do something you want to do? Having resourcefulness, it's a wonderful thing because it just adds the enrichment to our life. We don't have to fill our time up with so many things, and if we're just not filling it with every waking minute with something, that they're not being enriched. They need time to produce movies and produce soundtracks and write books, and this is what really the love of learning is all about. Create websites, play with their iPads, do something outside, start a garden, be able to get focused on that, have a farm, raise an animal. These are things our children want to learn about these things too. We want them to have the resources available to be able to do this, and this is the time that we have, to be able to do it while we're at our home teaching them every day. All right, so they might discover a hidden talent or a new hobby, and they may have done that since you start with New Beginnings, whereas before they didn't think, okay, well, maybe there wasn't something I really enjoy doing. Well, now you can see that they've kind of slowed down, they've kind of stepped back, and they thought about it. Life has become a little bit more quiet, and that's the way it should be. It becomes a little bit more quiet, not quite as hectic. Maybe they're talking with you more. Maybe you're having more meaningful conversations. I hope you are. I'll hope this first year that you were able to enjoy some of the moments of homeschooling. I hope you were able to document them, hold them as precious. They're precious things and precious achievements that you have done this year. So I hope you're able to document them and think about them, because it just is that many more that you're going to have. Okay, the last part that I want to focus on here is to keep on keeping on. And here's the first part. It says, do you feel burnout coming? And remember, I was telling you at the beginning of this workshop, it's not if, it's when. It's when it's coming. Have you forgotten how to say no? Have you overcommitted? And sometimes we do that. We overcommit. And that happens. Sometimes we get in the middle of a year and we think, okay, well, this is the 3rd year of me homeschooling, or 4th year. I think I can do this. I think I can do all these things. And then we realize, oh no, I've overcommitted. I can't do this. We have to be able to stop and say, you know what? Things have to change. Does your curriculum use too much of a formal school type of approach? Have you not really left the public school? And I'm not saying, we have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I've shared that with you before. There's some things that we enjoy, that perhaps the structure or something that we brought, a particular math curriculum or a particular reading program that we enjoy from public school. We don't have to throw it all away, but just remember that we're teaching the child. We don't have to follow this curriculum. And so if it's getting to be too formal and you're not having the enjoyment in there, then you need to step back and reevaluate. Here's another thing. Are you doing too much in your homeschool support group? Maybe we found a very wonderful homeschool support group. Some parents I know that they'll take their kids out of public school, they'll put them in these co-ops where they meet week after week, month after month, year after year. That's not what I choose to do. That's not my desire, and that's not what I want from a co-op. Co-ops are different. You know, I shared with you, they can be very academic. They can have a lot of emphasis on socialization. And let me explain one more time what a co-op is for some of you that may not have gotten it through the year. But there's no particular regulations. There's no particular way to set one up. There's no guidelines. Co-ops differ from city to city. Even within the same city, they differ. But co-ops are where one or more families join together to teach children about a particular topic. That's all it really is. But how many days you meet, if it costs or not, the subject, how fun it is, who teaches it, and the purpose of the co-op are all very different. I know some moms are so eager, you know, they think, okay, well, this co-op sounds good. I know I had one particular leader who shared with me when she first started a co-op that she thought it would be great to have, you know, her sons in a book club, a book kind of discussion club. Well, they found it absolutely boring. She thought it would be wonderful. Well, she was thinking more for herself. You know, that wasn't something her boys were particularly interested in. So, and then of course they found it very boring when they went. So co-ops can be set up for very different reasons. Personally, I prefer co-ops for my children, for my sons, that the emphasis is on socialization. I prefer to do the teaching at home. I enjoy doing the teaching. I prefer to choose the curriculum. When we meet with other homeschoolers, I prefer the emphasis to be on fun, socialization, the interaction. And I prefer it be some subject like history or science, something that's more conducive that a group can do, whether it's a medieval play, or whether it's a medieval feast, or whether it's doing a science experiment, whether it's hiring, you know, a science teacher or someone with a science background, whether it's doing a live bird presentation, whether it's doing a walk in the park, whether it's canoeing, whether it's archery, something that, you know, these are things that we have done, but they're better done in a group and much more fun. You know, when there's children of different ages, there's teens, moms, dads there. Those are the type of co-ops I prefer. I prefer things that teach Latin or any of these other things. I prefer to do that at home. And sometimes, yes, we can get these high school courses. Maybe our high schoolers getting ready for college. We might want to take advantage of maybe a homeschool mom that has a background in teaching and being prepared for the SAT, or perhaps teaching essays or composition. Maybe we need a little bit of help in that. But really look into it before you join. Who's going to be teaching? What are they going to expect? How much pressure is going to be placed on our child? You know, really decide and determine if that's something that's good for your family before you just jump into it. Same way with the support group. Not all support groups are created equal. Some support groups put more emphasis on football and prom and sports. They place emphasis on the older kids, and the younger ones kind of get, you know, left out when it comes to planning field trips. Some groups plan a lot of things for 4-year-olds, and there's never really anything for a 14-year-old. So you just have to look at all these support groups, co-ops, before you jump head first into it and ask a bunch of questions. So, you know, that's what I want you, you know, to be, you know, looking into. Are we doing too much in a homeschool group? And here's the fact that we have noticed that a lot of our newbies that go through our homeschool program, they are head and shoulders above a lot of other homeschoolers. They kind of get it together quickly, and other homeschoolers notice this, and they kind of focus on you and zero in on you and say, could you lead this class, or could you lead this co-op? And before you know it, you kind of get swamped being in the middle of a support group. Well, this is wonderful if it's serving your purpose, but sometimes it can take away from what you're doing with your children. So you have to go back to saying, well, no, or yes, I think I'll do that this year. You see, so just think about that. So that brings me to the next part. It says, if you will lead a homeschool support group down the road, will it be a joint effort by all, or will you be the only one keeping it going? Everyone's excited about a co-op, but not everybody's excited about paying for the expenses of the room. Not everybody's excited about preparing a lesson plan, and not everybody's excited about teaching it. But if someone else will do it, they'll show up. So sometimes there ends up being a lot of Indians and not enough chiefs when it comes to homeschool support groups. So just keep that in mind too, that I'm interested in you. I want to see you 4 or 5 years down the road like I have with some of my other newbies. And I want to hear from them because we happen to get attached to you. I know some of you will be leaving this month, off of our, Yahoo group and not any of the workshops, but I want you to stay connected with us somehow. We have a blog, we have a website, we have 2 websites. We have the New Beginnings, which is the Newbie Homeschooler, and then we have the Dynamic 2 Moms, which we share our free lap books, and we have a blog. That's a great way to follow us. We don't blog every day, but we do tell what's going on. We have Google Plus that we're on too. So stay connected with us some way. Don't leave our group and us not hear from you again, because we are interested in you. We want you to, to not get burnt out. We want you to enjoy your homeschool journey. All right, here's one more question that I want you to think about, or one more statement I want you to think about. And it says, I want you to find your balance between doing everything and no exposure to learning opportunities. There's no way that we can expose our children to everything. I've shared that with you all ago. And they will need time to explore. And sometimes this exploring time is unplanned. And children will need time for field trips. They'll need time to pursue their passion. For a couple of years we had joined a 4-H group. It was wonderful. They had scientists come and show us ecosystems. It was wonderful for those couple of years. I couldn't have done any more because of what was on my plate, but for those couple of years, it really enriched our science learning. And so there will be opportunities like that. So if something like that comes up in your homeschool journey and you say, okay, well, I really wasn't planning on that this year, but you see there's something that comes up and it's unplanned, seize the moment. That's what homeschooling's about. And I'll say, oh, well, I better go ahead and just get this done. If that opportunity's come along, well, and the 4-H club was new, it was up and running, it was small, but the ladies that were leading it were very active and organized, and who was going to come each month. I knew ahead what was happening. It was very much worth our time of going there each time and taking all the kids. And and I had it. That was when I didn't live where everything was out my back door. I lived more in the country, so I had to drive there. So it was quite the effort to get there, but it was so wonderful and so enriching. It was so unplanned, but we were able to seize that moment. And then across, the homeschool journey, I have taught many parents. A lot of them have, they were public school teachers. They had background in foreign languages or other kind of subjects, and I've had my children join and go to those classes that particular mom taught because it's enriching to my children. So be able to look around and to say, okay, how much of this do I need to, expose my children to, and balance that, because there's can be so many opportunities as you go along in the homeschool world. And then balance that with not getting burnt out and trying to say, okay, this is wonderful, and we got to do this, and we got to do this, and then you're not home anytime. All of it may be wonderful, but we might have to rein ourselves in for some of it. So just be able to pick and choose that. Here's the other thing. If you lose your way, reevaluate. Always reevaluate. And failure is part of learning and moving forward. That's what failure is part of. Just remember, everybody else is not doing it better. They're just doing it different. Get your way. Adopt your way that works for you and your family. Encourage others along the way from what you have learned and help them to see that they're not doing it better. They're just doing it differently and what works for their family. Pray for guidance. The Bible is our manual. Pray for guidance to be able to do this, to stay long term, and persevere. Maintain, because persevere means to maintain a purpose in spite of difficulty. Obstacles are encouragement. That's what perseverance means. I hope you adopt the spirit of perseverance, because Philippians 4:13 says, I can do everything through Him that gives me strength. And here's the final quote, and I will get a little emotional with you. And I'm not a crying person and a crybaby, but I do have a tendency to be that way when I think about you leaving this workshop. I hope you've been able to take something away from it. And here's the final quote I want to share with you. When the world says give up, hope whispers, try it one more time. Please stay to homeschool. And if you've had a hard journey, we want to hear from you. We care. We share this with you. I know there was no way in this 1 year we could share everything with you, but we have tried to hit the highlights of what you're going to come across in your journey. I hope you appreciate it. I hope you've been blessed by it. I hope you share it with others. And more than anything, we're glad that you were a member of New Beginnings. And we look forward to crossing paths with you in the future. Take care.